Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds, and then we will get started. Happy to have you here with us. All right, we're going to jump in. Again, thanks everyone for being here today. So excited to be with you. I think I said this on our last webinar. I wish we were with you in person, but we are eager to be with you virtually today as we continue to navigate this unusual time. And very happy to have our good friend Jerry Murray from North Group Consultants with us today. Jerry and I go back a long way, and Jerry and Masters go back even longer than that. Jerry's had a relationship with our firm to help us with strategic planning and personal coaching for a long time. Jerry, I think it's been close to a decade. Is that right?
I think we're approaching that. Yeah.
Outstanding. And we plan on many decades more, as long as Jerry doesn't get tired of us and kick us out. So we're very pleased to have Jerry with us today. As Jerry and I were talking recently, he introduced this concept that North Group's developed called a go forward plan, as they've thought about how we can come out of this current environment stronger and better and ready to go, ready for action as we emerge from this time. And as we were talking about that, we thought this would be something really valuable to share with you, our clients. I do want to give a quick plug that if you're not webinared out after today, I know North Group is doing another series on the go forward planning concept next week. I believe that's next Tuesday and next Thursday, both at 11 o'clock. That's going to dive, Jared, probably a little deeper into step by step. How do you put this thing together? Is that right?
That's right. So they'll focus on a few of the categories of the plan and how you come up with the plan and how you think through those categories.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So any of you who are interested in more, we'll make sure to get a link out to you after this webinar in case you're interested in diving a little bit deeper. But with that, Jer, I think you can launch with us as we talk through this. Please, any of you listening, if you have questions as we go, type them in the chat box, submit them as questions. We'll try to integrate those questions into Jerry's presentation, and then we also have a little bit of time at the end as well. So, Jerry, it's all you.
Thanks, Gary. Hey, and thanks for your trust. You're right, we are friends. I am a friend of Masters Advisors. I think super highly of the organization. I know we have friends listening today, and I just wanted to affirm your trust in Masters too. I've gotten to know them very well. I think really highly of the whole team and the leaders, Gary, Lyle, and Charlie. They just have some unique approaches on how much they value team and a team effort so they can bring as much intellectual property to the process as they can. They have a unique approach to generosity, not just for themselves and their clients, but also in encouraging others. And they just have a desire to continually refine and be better and to be unique. And it's inspiring. It's fun to be with them. They have fun with one another, and they just want to continue to get better. And so I've really been inspired by the time with them. So thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, and today we are sharing some elements from the Go Forward plan. As Gary mentioned, we'll be together for some time here. I have 6 content slides. I've got a story to tell for analogy purposes before that. Encourage you to send some questions through the chat box. We should have some time for Q&A at the end. And also at the end, I'll give you an email address if you'd like a template for this plan, how you could use it personally or as an organization. Just send the request to that email address, and I would be happy just to share that with you with no strings attached. So, hey, first we start with why, right? This fellow Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. And it makes a lot of sense. It brings context to why we talk about the things or why we approach things so that we can all understand in the same context. And I wanted to do that by way of a brief story, a little biographical story. I actually have my wife, Kim, and I share the privilege of raising 4 kids aged 11 to 20. 11 and 15 are the boys. The girls are 18 and 20. And our 18-year-old is one of those few that you've heard about who are graduating this year. And how unique of a graduating season is my daughter Ella having. And certainly there's an element of loss with that, but there's also an element of our desiring to come around her and celebrate with her and help her to experience some finality. But the concept of going from school to the next season creates transition. And it reminded me to think back of my last experience in school. And it was quite a few years ago, Gary. I think 27 years ago was when I graduated from Messiah College. I was an accounting major and had a good experience there. But as you're trucking through school, and I remember kind of that last semester at school, it's a pretty stable environment, right? It's not that it's easy. There's demands. You have to study. You have to learn new things. You have a lot of new relationships, and then that you're enjoying at that point. You're in this case, I was in my 4th year, and it wasn't easy, but it was stable and it was comfortable, and I knew what I needed to do to win, or what I needed to do to be successful. And so when school ended and the diploma came, that was great. But I went into this quiet period. I was thankful and blessed to have a job ready. That job wasn't going to start until September. And so that quiet period was about a 3 or 4 month period where I was home, wasn't quite sure what to do with my time. I wasn't quite sure how to be successful. I was starting to think about the next season that was coming. I knew it was coming. I was actually a little bit nervous about it because it was going to be completely new to me, this job experience. And so I got used to the stability of that season as well, even though it was awkward and different and caused me to hunker down and probably feel less productive than I had been in the previous season. But my next season, my job, I'm from Maryland. I grew up near Annapolis. Again, I went to Messiah College in central Pennsylvania. That's where I met several wonderful folks, including my wife, Kim. It's what brought me to central Pennsylvania eventually. But my first job was in Philadelphia. And so here's this, 21 or 22-year-old kid that now is going to pick up whatever he has, which isn't much. And I'm going to move to, in this case, the biggest city I think I'd ever been to, and start a job with an international accounting firm where I was one of 40 first-year accountants. I wasn't really good at laundry. I couldn't cook. Even though I was an accountant, I hadn't practiced budgeting for myself before, and I was entering this exciting time, but with uncertainty and with a lot of questions, and I didn't even know what all the questions were. And what I did know was that I figured stuff out before, and there are people in my life that are willing to help me. And then I have faith too. And I believe that with that faith and with a commitment to doing the right thing, I can get through that. And to some extent, I see that analogy of those 3 phases as what we're going through right now. The first 2.5 months of 2020 was, it was a time of great business successes for a number of people. Unemployment was low. Investments are doing well. Businesses are doing well. Of course, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania are areas where there are industrious people and just continue to do good things. And so, again, it was a demanding environment, but we knew how to win in that environment. We knew what the rules were. We knew how to engage, and we knew how to win. Boom, the middle of March came and everything changed. And leaders stepped up. They realized they had to come up with an immediate plan. In many cases, their businesses might have closed, maybe temporarily, maybe they just changed. But they came up with that plan, and they hunkered down. And they dealt with it all the while. They're experiencing some awkwardness, some uncertainty, but they're anticipating we're going to come out of this at some point in time. And that's what we're approaching now, right? We're either at red or yellow or almost yellow. We know the green's coming someday. You're starting to just hear a lot of buzz about movement. The hardware stores are completely busy on Saturdays now. You just see this activity where we're going back in, but it's a dynamic environment. It's not a stable environment. And there are a lot more questions than there are answers. How is my business going to fare in this economy? What's the right way to manage this whole physical distancing with friends, with family, for my kids, for my next generation parents? And how do I lead well in this scenario? How do I lead myself well? How do I lead my family well? How do I lead organizations well? And when I look back to that time when I was transitioning from college to my first job in Philly, I realized I didn't really have much of a plan. The transition went okay, but it could have gone really well with a plan. I could have used my time better during that season. I had a lot of it. I could have built some stronger relationships during that season. Definitely could have managed my money better during that season. And I think I probably could have even performed better at work with a little bit more clarity. Because without a plan, what we do is we react. And some of us are really good at reacting based on who we are. But I just believe that I do better when my reaction energy is saved for productivity and more intentional actions. And I love the mission of Masters Advisors. We manage wealth for a life of purpose, for purpose, for intentionality, to do good things, to be who we were made to be, and a plan is behind that. And so that's why I want to jump into the PowerPoint now, if that's okay, Gary.
Yeah, Jared, if I could just draw one more parallel there, a metaphor I was thinking about is very similar. And I was thinking about when you take a long trip. So we have a vacation coming up in a few weeks. We're going down to South Carolina. It's about a 12-hour drive. And so, of course, I'm a planner. So I'm thinking ahead about how this trip's going to go. So I have my plan. I know what route we're going to take, what time we're going to leave, where we're going to stop, when I hope we get there. But what happens if a few hours into that trip, I hit a traffic jam? I feel like this time that we're in is like a traffic jam. We all of a sudden have lost all of our control, just like that. Everything's come screeching to a halt, and we're just crawling along. And if we don't prepare for when that traffic's going to open back up, either we're not going to be ready for it and someone's going to rear end us, or we're going to be panicked and so ready for it that our foot goes pedal to the metal and we swerve off the road. And so that might be a little extreme, but that's a similar metaphor to what you shared. And that's how I think of when we're in this time. We've lost control of a lot of things. But what we haven't lost control of is our ability to be prepared for whatever comes next, even though we don't know what exactly next is going to be. And in this case, definitely don't know when it's going to be. And so I'm eager to get into this a little more because that's what I really think is the motivation behind putting a plan together and being really intentional about how we're going to approach this when that traffic opens back up.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Well, let's see. Okay, Gary, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
All right, terrific. We'll jump right back into it. So just to summarize on why are we talking about a go forward plan? The unique combination of events that we all know about have caused many of us to become observers for a period of time, right? We're stuck. But our nature as people is to move beyond observer to become a contributor. We want to move from overwhelmed to action. And sometimes the things we're overwhelmed by carry a higher proportion of our thoughts than they would need to. And so we want to move beyond that. So while we may have different opinions regarding the current situation, we've become used to it. It's static, as we mentioned. We need to plan to move into a new dynamic environment where we reemerge into a rebuilding economy. That's like my move to Philly, or like that traffic jam opening up. This is really important. A leader's responsibility is to craft and communicate a vision and plan for the benefit of themselves and others. Someone is waiting for you to do your job well. Someone wants to know there's a plan. Someone wants to hear how does that impact them and what can they do to contribute so they can be productive too. For individuals, it's self-leadership. For organization, that's the executives and managers coming together. Hey, and I'll just stop for a second and realize a lot of organizations have done this to some extent. So I hope that this is an affirmation and maybe even an encouragement to some elements of what are important. So planning well does a few things. The first thing it does is it improves the alignment and cohesion of your team. When individuals come together around a common purpose, that's how we grow together. That's how we believe together. That's how we feel closer and engaged together. Planning well provides clarity too. The clarity of what is most important right now and how can I contribute to what's most important right now. Planning well becomes the basis for consistent communication. Hey, we hear it all the time. We never communicate enough, and I'd say especially now. Individuals are more often working remotely. It's a changing environment. We're needing to overcome bad news, and we believe that we have a responsibility to offset that with good, positive, clear communication. Emotions are contagious, just like everything else. And when we can give belief that a plan provides of where we're going to go, we believe that emotions can become positive, really positive, and that will contribute to advancement in our organization. The last thing, planning well reduces the risk that we'll make decisions inconsistent with who we are and what we believe. In other words, that we might just react without having thought about it in advance. I'd just add that clear thinking, thoughtful prioritization, healthy engagement, and over communication lead us to best case scenarios in uncertain times.
Jerry, you mentioned a concept there that may be new to some people on the call that I think would be helpful to just unpack a little bit more. And the term you used was self-leadership. I think when a lot of us think about leaders or leadership, we think about that in an organizational context. But all of us are leaders somewhere, even to ourselves. So can you just talk about that a little bit more, that concept of self-leadership and what that might mean for someone who's not necessarily in a traditional leadership role as we might think about it?
Sure. Yeah. I'm thankful the organization that I work for, North Group Consultants, have a goal to help individuals and their organizations to achieve their highest potential. And so for individuals to achieve their highest potential, they need to own their responsibility in that, right? And so the responsibility is to be aware of how you impact others, to be aware of how your behaviors are consistent with your beliefs. Sometimes to step back and even be reminded or to declare what it is you believe so that you can live that with courage and with purpose. And that's what self-leadership is all about. There's a discipline required. It's helpful to have some accountability in that regard, but it gives the opportunity for you to achieve your highest potential, which doesn't mean that the blessings all return to you, but in most cases, we were made to bless others. So it enables us to more intentionally use our gifts for the benefit of others.
Yeah, that's great. And really, just to summarize, that's just the process of us stepping back and reevaluating, maybe reaffirming who am I meant to be? Who do I want to be? What are my values? What are most important to me? So that I can be prepared to lead both myself with those values and then, of course, in turn, those around me, whether that is organizationally, whether that's within my family, within my community, that would go out to all those places. And that's why that's an important concept for a time like this.
It is, and it's different from, what I would call navel gazing, where I just want to observe myself because I'm really interested in myself, or I like myself, which it's good to like yourself, but it's how can I be purposeful? How can I recognize those things in me and to determine whether they have the intended impact that I would hope that they have, again, for myself and for others too.
Yep. Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, so the next slide, what is a go forward plan? So pretty simply, it is a written plan that identifies the priorities for an individual organization of focused effort over a given period of time. So this is a transition plan. This isn't forever. This is, you can say whether it's a 60-day plan or a 100-day plan. We've declared at North Group, ours is for 90 days. We believe this transition is going to require 90 days for us to get back to the office, to get back to full engagement, to be prepared to respond well to our clients' needs, to understand their needs better. And that's our view. So this is a written plan that identifies priorities for a focused effort over, in our case, a 90-day period. It becomes a living document that's a bridge between the current reality of yourself or your organization to the desired future state of your organization. So again, it starts with an assessment of where we are now. There are some things swirling, but we want this to be a bridge to get us through that season to our desired future state. The document addresses a balance of topics and categories that are of importance to you. I'll later on in the presentation share the categories that North Group chose for our organization. It's completed by a team of influencers in your organization or family. It doesn't have to be just one person in a company. In fact, it's best when numerous minds come together. There's more engagement when that happens. There's more shared responsibility when that happens, and skin in the game that's going to give you confidence that we're in this together and we're going to find our way through this together. It's simple and clear. And it includes SMART goals, goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely.
Gary, that SMART goal concept is, I think, something that's probably familiar. I find one of the pieces of that acronym that may be a little difficult for some of us is the attainable piece. How do we determine whether we're setting the bar too low, too high, or just right? It seems to me like that's a difficult balance to land on. How do you suggest we go about honing in on that attainable piece so that we're stretching, or we're not stretching so far that's over our head, and we're not setting the bar too low that we can just hop over it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gary. And I would say in general, that depends on who the individual is, what their natural wirings are, and how they regulate their own competitive spirit and that sort of thing. In this environment, though, I'd have a specific answer that I would probably offer to anyone. And that is, I would tend to set those goals a little bit lower than normal. And here's why. If we think that we're going to bite off this huge goal and we're not seeing any progress whatsoever, that's going to impact our emotions. That's going to impact our momentum. That's going to impact our belief in whether we're going to get there, whether we're going to come out of this, whether we're going to get back to at least where we were before. And I'm not suggesting that we become sandbaggers in any way, but I think that there is a real need and desire to build momentum again. And so when we can have a win here, a win there, and start to see that we're accomplishing things, I promise that is going to generate momentum in an organization. And that organization is going to develop habits that are going to get us beyond and probably even take us to the larger goals that we might have otherwise written down.
Yeah, that's great. That makes total sense, because I think that's really difficult too when we're thinking about ourselves and our personal goals, is finding that balance and trying to determine, well, I don't want to set the bar so high that I lose motivation right off the bat.
Right.
But I also want to stretch myself. So I really like that concept that, well, maybe in this environment, especially since it's a condensed period of time, We just need to err on the side of, hey, let's accomplish some things, build that momentum, and allow that momentum to carry us forward to maybe the goals that stretch us a little bit more.
That's right. That's right. So where do we start? We want to start by finding a stable place to start from. You might remember back to the story of moving to Philly. You know, when I wasn't sure of all these questions, my thoughts were, well, I figured it out before. There are people in my life that I can rely on for help, and a general belief or faith and a commitment to move forward. So back to the basics. In an organization, or even for individuals, we recommend starting by remembering who you are. Going back to the most basic values that define you provides a confident, firm foundation for decision making. And that's going to be the lens that we create the plan from too. Again, it helps us not to be reactive. It helps us to stay in our shoes and remember where we're coming from and how we want to impact people, whether it's our own team, our clients, or the community. So jotted down here on the presentation, Masters values, and then North Groups as well. I love these values. You know, Gary, authenticity, conscientiousness, empathy, and optimism. You know, clearly these are well thought out. These are unique to who you and to who your team members are. I'm sure they become a prism through which you know how you want to behave, how you want to impact lives, and that's what values should be. For North Group, we have 4 unique values as well. These have been around for the, let's see, 23 or 24 years of our existence. We wish to instill hope, build character in others, encourage balanced living, and we want to model an others-centered focus. I'd say, just on this topic also, there's a false belief that we're going to need to figure everything out again in this new normal. It's just not true. We want to be consistent in who we are, and remembering that is going to simplify our areas of focus.
I love that, Jerry, because I've been hearing a lot about the new normal and what's this going to look like when we're back to that. And I was thinking about that. Every day is a new normal. I mean, every day is a new normal. Every week is a new normal, no matter what's going on. And so when we revisit our values and go back to those central values that we want to be led by all the time, that's where the value starting with why is. And one of my questions for you in this concept is, when we're trying to figure out what these values should be, one of the traps I believe we can fall into is that we put aspirational values down on our list. And an aspirational value is something that we want to be, but not something that we are today. And when we do a values exercise, we really want to focus on what is natural to us, that we want to come out of us when we're interacting with those around us and trying to do the things that we've set out to do. So either in an organizational context or in an individual context, how can we balance that when we're working through our values? If maybe some of us feel like, oh, this is a good time to do a rediscovery of my values and make sure that what I've always said is important to me is indeed still what's important to me. How do we fight off the urge to choose aspirational values that are going to be very difficult to live up to because they're not really true to us, versus values that are true to us that we want to exemplify?
Yeah, wow, that is a tough question. And I would say that there's another bookend to that, and it's what author Patrick Lencioni would call permission to play values. It would be the values that, man, you just have to have, or else no one's going to want to do business with you. Like, hey, you better have integrity, right?
Sure.
But for the aspirational values, no individual or organization is perfect. And so it would be unrealistic to think we have to have it all together to put a value, like empathy or authenticity into our list. we don't have to be perfect. That says aspirational doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it does have to be who you are. And when we're at our best, how are we behaving uniquely? When we're at our best, how are we thinking in terms of the service delivery that we think is going to be unique for our clients? When we're at our best, how do we want it to feel for a team member to come in to Masters Advisors or to North Group Consultants and experience life here? And when we think of the people in our organization that exemplify most our organization, what are the character traits that would define them? And these would be some of the questions that we'd ask to come up with what are the true values. And in some cases, it might feel aspirational for all of us to get there in perfect harmony, but yet they would be the true values because they're the uniqueness of who we are. And then again, it becomes an exercise of, so what behaviors are consistent with those values, so we can be clear to everyone so they can know this thing that they feel, how they can be demonstrating that too.
Yeah, Jared, just to kind of work in some of these questions, one of the things you mentioned on the last slide related to engaging your whole team when you're developing this plan, or engaging your whole family when you're developing this plan. Is that also the case when we're looking at our values, if we're doing a rediscovery of these, that we should have some sounding boards there with our team or other family members? Would that be a good way to check ourselves as to, are we settling on things that are really authentic and true to us?
I think so, Gary. It's like a 360-degree evaluation. This is what I want to be true. Would you reflect that this is true of us? Hey, we know that this is true of us. Do you know what this means? Well, how can we describe this better so that you can understand it, so you can know how to live in this truth too? So for different purposes, we would absolutely want to engage multiple people for values to come only from one person without at least some feedback as to whether they're true, not just something that we're aspiring to, would be hard for the organization to follow, because then they might not understand whether this is a personality of an individual or this is a behavior that impacts all of us, and we can share in that and grow the culture.
Yep, great. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
So next slide, some examples of how to create the planned content. And again, we have a template that we would be glad to share. These examples come from North Group's plan. So the first section is, what are the focus categories that we included? Again, every organization or family might have different ones, but these are the ones that we came up with. The first one, man, we're in this new time. We have to figure out what physical distance means for our team. We do not want to have social distance. We want to have physical distance because we have to, because there are safety elements involved. We want to demonstrate care for individuals. We want to give clarity on what that means and how we're going to provide supplies to enable that and support that, but we want to maintain social engagement. And so we were very intentional to clarify the difference between those two for our organization. The second focus category for us is our team. You might look at that as your family if you're an individual or if you're leading a family. Several things were important to us for that. We wanted to continue to over-engage our team, particularly during this time. I know last week Doug spoke on a webinar with you, Gary, on the idea of isolation. And for different people in different ways, they're just not engaging at the level that they would hope to, or that bring the most life to them. And we want to view our team as a group of folks that we can provide that engagement with. We also want to give them clarity regarding how they can be productive during this time. Some things slow down during this time. There's been some pullback on some level of engagement with clients. How can our employees be productive? How can they feel like they continue to contribute? Well, we feel like we've got some responsibility to help them to find productive things to do too. So again, these are some content of that category. The next one, clients. again, personally, that might be friends, care so much about our clients, as do you, Gary, and we want to find creative ways to let them know that we're thinking about them. We want to put ourselves in their shoes and imagine what could be helpful to them right now as they're moving through this transition period as well. And we want to reach out to them on a regular basis. Our next category was community. Again, that could be neighbors, that could be church, that could be the people where you live. We're all in this together. We're really thankful for the work that's being done by community organizations to help to strengthen the community, provide for the community, connect people in the community needs with people that want to help. And we want to be part of that, and we want to contribute to that. And we see us all getting stronger as we do. And so that's another category for us at North Group. The fifth, we've got 6, by the way. The fifth is a financial category. Hey, it's real, right? Many businesses have experienced the financial impact of this time. We have as well. We know that there are new realities, and it drives some new approaches to how we manage the business. It causes us to maybe create some new goals. And, Gary, I think of your question before on how far to stretch those goals, but goals that we can all believe in. And it also causes us to realize the importance of communicating with our team in terms of how we're doing financially, because they're wondering how it might impact them. And that makes sense. Yeah, I would wonder too. And then the last category that we have in our Go Forward plan is the category of strategic initiatives. So think about this. A lot of healthy organizations or even individuals that are leading themselves well, they enter the year and they say, hey, these are some things I want to get done this year. And that's absolutely the case for North Group. 2020 is going to be a year of expansion. We had some unique things that we were going to start, whether it's services or where we were going to serve. And we enter the season, and the question is, are those still in play? Have those ended? Will we get back to them? And for us, they are still in play, and they haven't ended, and we are going to get to them. However, some things changed, and so what that meant for us was to say, what's a more reasonable time period? Are we still committed to this? And again, who are the individuals that we think are best slated to move these forward at this time?
Yeah, Jerry,
go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, one comment on that, just to contrast what you just said, is we had an item on our plan that we reevaluated as part of this process. And we actually said, wow, this is one that we need to speed up. We need to do it sooner than we thought we were going to. So I think there's two ends to that. And there's a question that I'm going to fit in there, which is, for those of us who have done a strategic plan for our organization, or have done a personal plan of some sort, or set personal goals, how do we take what we did at the beginning of the year that may have a different level of relevance for all of us? How do we take that and fit that into this shorter term kind of restart plan? How do we merge those things together? And I'm thinking of, let's say I set these personal goals at the beginning of the year. I want to do this in this area and that in that area. Do I just tear that up, throw it out, and start over? Am I merging these things together? Am I putting that on pause while I build the short-term go forward plan? What approach do you advocate for there?
Yeah, well, hey, when we get ready to put a plan like this together, you want to assess where you are. What is our starting point for this plan? And that assessment is part qualitative and part quantitative. It's a discussion, again, with multiple people in your organization, or maybe even with your family. If it's a personal plan, it's something you want to think through and jot down. Just be realistic, because the plan is to readdress what are our priorities right now. And by way of having this strategic initiative category, this is where we say we want to address these for our organization. So we think it's really important to communicate to our team so that they know this is what is still a priority to us, or this is a priority that, as you mentioned, we're going to accelerate for reasons of our current situation, or maybe some that are delayed, but they're still going to happen. So I think an assessment, a reprioritization, but then a communication are all really important. Again, having a plan so we're not reactive, so something doesn't just get put on a shelf somewhere. Oh, you know what happened last year. We had to put it on the back burner and we haven't gotten back to it. Might never get back to it if we approach it that way. But if we say, hey, this was important to us at the beginning of the year, it's still important to us. Either the timing has changed because of what we've assessed to be true right now, or we're going to accelerate it. Hey, and we're going to let people know because they want to know. They were interested in the beginning. They believed in the integrity of our leadership at the beginning, and we don't want them to lose their fire for that, but just to understand how maybe the priorities have changed.
Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense.
So two elements to each category of the plan. First is a posture statement. So this is where we describe the philosophy for that area of the plan. It's like the stance that our values, going back to who we are, require for each particular category. I'll give you an example in a minute. And then plan goals. This would go back to the SMART goals, and we would say 3 or 4 succinct tactical goals for each area of focus. So here's the example, and this is North Group's plan category of financial. So the posture statement, again, this is that stance where we're looking through the prism of our values to talk about how we are going to have a transitionary plan for our finances over the next 90 days. We will carefully steward and increase our financial capability to provide for the well-being of our employees and support an anticipated increased demand for our services. So, hey, there are a few things in there. Our values suggest that we want to steward well, and we certainly believe that there's still going to be an increased demand for our services. And at the same time, we care about our employees, and we want to do this for that reason. We're a consulting firm. Our assets are our people, and we had an absolute probably #1 priority during this whole time of we want to keep our team intact, both because of who they are and because of what we do. And so this was all part of the posture for our plan. Several specifics. The first one, and I just mentioned it, we want to fully employ, engage, and compensate all team members through Q2 and the foreseeable future. We want to monitor cash flow trends weekly. We actually do it daily, and manage cash flow wisely in full consideration of our stewardship goals in the current period and for the foreseeable future. We would not have been managing our cash flow daily or weekly if not for this. You've heard me talk about communicating. Well, again, on our plan, we want to consider and encourage our team by over communicating our financial position and progress. And then last is we want to research an efficient means for over communicating client wins, client renewals, and client successes for purposes of celebration and momentum building. I mentioned before, we believe emotions are contagious, and we want to rebuild that momentum. And when we share the good things that happen, again, whether it's a small win, a renewal, or a new client coming on board, or something good that's happening with a client, it helps us all to see and believe in this transition period happening in a positive way.
Jerry, I think that's something that we've all faced to some degree. We've lost our natural social connections that we're used to having on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And I think that highlights why North Group sees it as so vitally important to over communicate. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit in the familial context. How would we go about over communicating just on a social level because within our family, we're not going to have a, daily video chat to update on some family strategic initiative. Maybe we would if we're in a family business, or if we're in a unique family situation. But in general, we more just want to stay connected with each other, see how we can be helpful to each other, to our kids, or maybe for some of us, our grandkids, or cousins, or aunts and uncles, whoever it may be. So what have you seen, or how would you suggest we think about the concept of over communication when it comes to our family?
Yeah, wow. Another really good question, Garrett. I'm thinking on two levels. One is the isolation level. How do we stay in touch when maybe we're not ready to be together just yet? And in terms of family, that might mean more frequent phone calls, or the use of this ubiquitous video conferencing options, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it might be. But it's a life of purpose. Might be to think about, hey, who might enjoy a conversation? Who might not have had as full of a day as I did today? Who can I be thinking about within the context of family? That's one level. Another one is there are a lot of things that we could easily feel reactive to right now. Again, we have younger kids, and there are frequent questions. Can I do something with my friend right now? Can I ride in a car with them? Can I go with you to the store? Can I buy this right now? Or can we still go on the vacation? When will it be okay to travel? And again, we can react to those, and we can probably be okay, but when we get ahead of them and we can create a shared set of expectations that wouldn't result in us or our kids or even our spouse to feel victim to, oh man, we can't do that again, or I thought you said we could, but now you've changed your mind. Maybe you weren't feeling good based on the news you heard that day. But to remember, hey, here's our context, and here's what we can do, and here's what we're going to do based on who we are, and here's how we're going to prioritize our decision making. Then there's more continuity, there's more belief, and again, emotions are contagious, and we can think together. No, we are getting things done. We have found things to do where we can be productive. We have found things where we can be relational. Okay, we're ready for the next step with connecting with family or with friends, and we feel really good about it because we have a why behind it, and we believe it together.
Yeah, and a follow-up question to that is that a lot of us are now used to what we're doing here together right now.
Right.
We're used to doing that in this context, in the webinar context, and also in the shared call context. And there's some advantages to that, right? There are some positives about that.
Sure.
So how do we integrate what we've learned about these remote capabilities and the connection we can have without being right next to someone through this technology with how we use that going forward? How should we be thinking about that, or trying to fit that into, we'll call it the new normal when we get back?
Yeah, I'm really thankful for the video conferencing technology. Just to stick with that example, my parents live in Virginia, although they winter in Florida. They've been down there this whole time. I spoke to them today on the telephone, but I've had opportunities to see them too. And there's a warmth of connection when you see someone and you see their smile, and you're reminded of the connectivity. That's something we will definitely use more going forward. And so, yeah, new technologies, new ideas. I love to integrate them. I think it's going to strengthen relationships. But again, we just need to be intentional to do it. And so that goes back to self-leadership, to remind ourselves who we want to be, why connection is important, and to remember that we do have alternatives to connect right now, and we can take them forward to add to our bag of alternatives, even when we're able to be together with a little bit more confidence.
So that might be something that we just work right into a plan like this. That's part of the value of a plan like this is, I know one thing we have been doing is a recurring call with my wife Caitlin's family. We're a little more spread out and, haven't seen a lot of each other. And we just, set that up maybe a month and a half ago and have continued to do it. And it's been a lot of fun for all of us because we have had that level of connection. And I assume some other families have done the same thing. So maybe integrating that into our plan and then putting some intentionality behind it of having a regular interval in which you do that or where everyone gets together and do that, I would think would increase the likelihood of you being able to keep that habit up, even as all the normal busyness of life creeps back in. Would you say that that's an accurate way to think about that concept within the go forward plan?
Yeah, it surely would, because what you just described was building a habit. And when something's habitual, you don't have to think about it or remember it. It becomes woven into your daily behaviors. And so I totally agree. That's a great suggestion, Gary.
Yeah, great.
So just a few additional thoughts. When thinking about the plan, perfection is the enemy of progress. Timely production of a plan is the way to go to move together. We're entering this season now. We want to have it ready, and we can refine it in the future as we go along. We want to revisit it regularly, again, to demonstrate that those priorities are truly priorities, and we want to over communicate it regularly as well. Right now, as you know, you want to be highly engaging with your team, family, those who depend on you. This is a time to develop the habits that Gary was just mentioning. Experts suggest that engagement should be 3 times what it normally is during unstable seasons. And just to bring comfort, to bring peace, to remind people who they are and what support systems that they have, to remind them of truth, to over communicate it. Strategic plans like this one are living documents, can and should be changed. We talked about that refinement. We suggest utilizing shorter than normal evaluation cycles to monitor the progress. So if your team normally gets together quarterly to evaluate progress on plans, we'd say, let's do it monthly. If you normally get together monthly, suggest bi-weekly. Again, this is a shorter plan for a season. We're developing habits. We are developing momentum. And so we want to be together regularly, definitely more often than normal. We talked about celebrating the small wins during the season. And finally, we strongly suggest, and we know that most of you would naturally do this, to reflect on what you have learned about yourself, your family, your team, and organization. Document it. Don't forget it. Consider how to become better because of what you learned.
Jerry, I was thinking of maybe if you could provide one example, either personal one or one that's related to North Group as a whole, of where you've seen that reflecting on what you learned, reflecting on maybe how you could be better, maybe just sharing an example with us that you've seen as you've reflected on that.
Yeah, we actually asked our team to collect all of their learnings during this time and send them to one of our operations team members to document them. So we have a list, but one thing that we learned very early on is we wanted to be together. So we came up with this rallying cry of over-engage and over-communicate. And then as we did, we were able to understand what felt engaging to different team members. And we became really productive in impacting our business. So while maybe the client work hasn't been as busy over the last 9.5, 10 weeks as it was in the first quarter, we've had a much higher percentage. In fact, I think we have 100% contributions from our team members in terms of on the business advancements. So, and normally we might have had, I don't know, a third of our team was involved in documenting new systems or refining new services or collecting data that can be used with our clients in an organized fashion or coming up with new services. And that hasn't been the case over the last 9.5 or 10 weeks. You know, as we've learned this, as their engagement and interest has grown, our ability to accelerate the improvements in our business has grown and it's been fantastic. And it's, again, something that we're going to take with us from here, just like technology or other ideas that have come from this. Heard a speaker not too long give a recommendation to graduates, going back to where we started. And he said 3 things. He said, first, I want to give you permission to mourn. I think that you should just acknowledge, hey, you had some loss at the end of your school year, and it's true. He said, second, celebrations, the graduation ceremonies, they're going to be different this year. Have a real ceremony, whether you have it with 1 or 2 people or with your family. If you're not able to do it with a broader group, have a ceremony so you can experience the finality and know that you're moving from one season to the next. He said, and the third thing, it sounds a little bit harsh, but he refined it. This was Patrick Lencioni, by the way, on a short video. He said, basically, get over it. Don't suggest that where I'm going from here is in spite of that. We're getting stronger because of that. And that's what we want to be true about ourselves, Gare. We want to be people that, and we know this about ourselves, we get stronger through the challenges of life. And this has been a challenge, and the transition is a challenge, but someone is waiting for us to do the right thing. And this is why we want to have a plan. We want to have it because it helps us to coalesce the ideas of a group, find out what the best case scenario could be. It's going to bring our team together by hearing it together and knowing how they can impact it. And we want to communicate it really well, because when we communicate it really well, then your team members don't have to wonder and they don't have to assume the worst either.
Yeah, that's great, Jared. And I think I'm going to try to squeeze one last question here as we wrap up. You talked about tracking progress of the plan and doing that more on a more regular basis. So a 2-part question would be, how often should we revisit the plan as a whole? So rather than just looking at the parts, how often should we be looking at that as a whole and reevaluating if everything's still relevant? And how do we merge in the external factors that may be affecting the plan one way or the other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell you how we're doing it. So one thing I did not mention and should have, and you saw it there on our financial plan, you saw some names in parentheses. You know, you saw a Jerry / Roger and a Gina and Amy, and I think the partners. To communicate the plan well, we need to know who's going to be responsible for each element of the plan, right? Then you know who's responsible, how often we're going to get together to talk about it, who we go to remove obstacles. And so that's something that's really important to a plan. So for ours, a 90-day window, we meet on a weekly basis for updates. You know, how are we doing? What have we learned? What obstacles need to be removed? Do we know very clearly how elements of this get approved and put into place? And during that time, the feedback that comes back might suggest, hey, you know, something's changed. What we thought was true isn't true. And so here's something we'd like to refine. And it becomes a conversation among the leaders in the organization. And we come to the decision of what is best for our company in light of what we've learned. So for us, short-term 90-day plan, we're interacting on a weekly basis for updates, and we have a clear understanding of who's responsible for each item and who they can go to help remove obstacles or share suggestions for refinement to that plan.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks so much, Jared, for sharing. I know for those who are interested, Jerry and North Group have offered to give out a template. Like he said, absolutely no strings attached. Just want to be helpful in this season.
That's
So
right.
thanks for that, Jerry. That's great. So right there's the information. We'll send that out as well as a follow-up to the webinar to send them an email if you'd like to see a template. I will warn you, North Group's plan, Jerry said, you know, something's better than nothing, but it's like perfect. It looks great. It's comprehensive. It's really well done. So don't be too intimidated by that, but just use it as a guide. So thanks again for that, Jerry, and thanks so much for your time
Yeah.
today. Really appreciate you spending the time with us, and I'm sure it'd be all right if anyone has follow-up questions to just put them in touch with you specifically.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to help. And thank you, Gary, again for your trust. And I enjoyed the conversation today.
Great, thanks everyone. Have a great evening, and we hope to all talk to you all soon, and hopefully see you before too long as well. Have a great evening.
Right. Bye-bye.